Hello everyone, Darren from DrayTek Australia and New Zealand. In this webinar we'll examine the Vigor3912 series router, one of the latest additions to the DrayTek product line. I'll focus on the Vigor3912S, an enterprise level router with additional security features that I'll discuss. I'll start by providing an overview of the Vigor3912, including product highlights and how it compares to previous enterprise level routers. Then introduce you to the built-in Linux applications that are available, followed by an overview of the security features. Okay, let's begin with a look at some of the Vigor3912 highlights. Physically, the Vigor3912 series router looks similar to the older Vigor3910 router, almost identical in fact. It's a 10 gigabit router with 10 gigabit, 2.5 gigabit and 1 gigabit ports. In addition, each of the ports highlighted here can be configured either as WAN or LAN ports, which is similar to the Vigor3910. However, it performs much better than the 3910 router, mainly due to the faster processor and increased memory. The 3912 has a 4-core ARM-based CPU and 8 gigabits of RAM, which is 4 times the RAM size of the Vigor3910. This results in a bidirectional NAT throughput of 15.6 gigabits per second. In addition, VPN throughput is greatly increased as well. As we can see here, the 3912 is the latest iteration of the 3900 series. The 3900 was released in 2013, and 6 years later came the Vigor3910. Now, 5 years later than that, we have the Vigor3912. If you have a 3910 and wish to upgrade to the 3912, the router configuration is fully compatible, so you can import the configuration file directly into the new router. Here we have a comparison of performance between the Vigor3910 and 3912. The 3912 series comes in two models, the Vigor3912 and the Vigor3912S. The S stands for SSD and allows some applications to run directly from the router. The 3912S is the first DrayTek router to have an integrated SSD. It comes with a 256GB drive, but it is possible to install a higher capacity one. On the right is a list of some we've tested. Ubuntu is pre-installed on the SSD as part of the firmware installation in the router, along with a couple of Docker applications, which are Vigor Connect, which is a lightweight ACS management application, and Suricata, which is a threat detection application, which I'll talk more about later. So you can regard the SSD as a Ubuntu PC on your network and install and run other Docker applications as well. Plenty of storage space allows more creativity and more possibility when developing new functions. Here we have a list of the new features that are available in the 3912S. Port knocking is a feature introduced in later firmware versions for several routers, which I'll explain more about shortly. There are also some new VPN features, including VPN support for SHA-512 encryption. The main security features are highlighted in red. These are Smart Action, Suricata, and IP Reputation. Okay, port knocking. This is used to control access for NAT connections and the router management console. It's a security technique for controlling network devices or service access. It involves sending a sequence of connection attempts to a set of predetermined closed ports on the device. Without port knocking, the only option would be open ports, which would mean the service will always be exposed to the internet and can be scanned by malware. With port knocking, the port is normally closed. It only opens whenever needed. The port opening is triggered by sending the correct sequence of port knocks to establish the connection. Knock on the right ports in the right order, you get access. Anything else will be denied. In the example shown here, TCP port 8080 is closed. The client needs to use TOTP and the port knock tool to gain access to the server behind the router. TOTP is an abbreviation for time-based one-time password and is a common form of two-factor authentication. The port knock tool, which you will need to install on your PC, can be downloaded from DrayTek at the link shown here, which I'll include in the description below. More information on port knocking is available in Knowledge Base article 11836. Let's now look at the Linux applications available in the Vigor3912S. Before you can start using the Linux applications on the router's SSD, you'll have to assign an IP address and the gateway IP address for the Linux service. The IP address needs to be in the same subnet as the router's, but not one that's already taken by another device. The gateway address is the router's IP. Also, to access the Linux service via SSH, select the checkbox to enable the Linux SSH service. Notice that in the Linux Applications menu you'll find Vigor3912S, Suricata, Log Collector, and Web Notification History. Once the Linux IP address and gateway are set up, use SSH to access the Linux services. Once connected, you'll see a menu with several options as shown here. We're using PuTTY to start an SSH connection to the Linux drive. After logging in, we can see the Application Configuration Tool menu. The first option is to upgrade the Linux packages. Clicking on this starts downloading and installing the updates. Next we have Docker applications, and again we have several options to display running containers and applications. For Docker applications we have Portainer, Suricata, and Vigor Connect. Next, within the Applications menu we have LDAP Server and OpenWRT. This is what OpenWRT looks like after it's been configured. Finally, you can go to the Linux shell and have access to the CLI. Here you can see that Ubuntu is installed, and running the df command you can see that there is plenty of capacity left on the SSD. We'll now have a look at Suricata. Suricata is an open source network analysis and threat detection application in the Vigor3912S. Enabling Suricata allows the router to be an intrusion detection system, that's an IDS, monitoring LAN and WAN traffic through the router. Suricata inspects slow path packets, and once the session is established, data transfer occurs in the fast path. Slow path traffic is data packets that require processing by the router CPU. Suricata generates a log if it detects unusual activity. The router's web notification function can then send the log to the network administrator. Suricata can be enabled from the Linux Applications Suricata menu. Once enabled, the Suricata database is checked every day for any updates. You'll notice here that there are two parts, the core base and the rules. The core base can be considered as something similar to an antivirus application, and the rule will be something like the antivirus signature. 4 pre-configured profiles can be selected, with level 1 being the highest and level 4 being the lowest. Within each profile there are the following categories: miscellaneous activities, unauthorized access attempts, denial of service and network attacks, suspicious code and content, network Trojan and malware activities. So now that Suricata has got the logs, what happens next? Well, Suricata by itself isn't very useful because it only generates threat logs in the background, so you'll need someone to constantly keep an eye on the log file to see if a pattern of interest occurs. But if we use it in conjunction with Smart Action, which is another feature within the Vigor3912S, we can then get notifications or even block access. I'll come back to this in a moment. Within Suricata there is also the Statistics tab, which shows the number of logs in a graphical format. If you mouse over a point on the graph, it'll show you the number of logs at that point and the priority level. Double-clicking on it will display the Suricata logs at this point. Within the Linux applications there is also a log collector, which allows searching and downloading log files for the period of interest, but you will need to manually scan the logs. In addition, there is the web notification history, which lets you look at log events such as attempted logins into the router. So, to summarise Suricata, its role is to monitor all traffic to and from LAN hosts, generate alerts, and be an intrusion detection system. On to the Smart Action feature, which can send out notifications or block access when an event is detected in the Suricata logs. Smart Action uses the log keyword match function to automatically scan the console or Suricata logs to find trigger events. It can run certain tasks such as sending alerts or taking other actions when a predefined trigger event occurs. You can configure up to 64 profiles to manage different tasks. The action types available within Smart Action are Command Line Interface, Mail Alert, Webhook, Web Notification, Telegram, and Block IP. Let's take a look at an example. We want Smart Action to notify us of an attempted attack from the internet. So here in the router syslog we can see entries for attempted VPN login failures from the internet. That maximum retries exceed log entry could indicate an attempted brute force attack, or it could just be someone who's forgotten their VPN password and they keep trying over and over and over. Either way, we want to know about it so we can configure Smart Action to notify us whenever we get the maximum retries exceed message. To make that happen, go to Applications Smart Action and select a new index. Then select the event type, which in this case will be log keyword match, then enter a keyword as text as maximum retries exceed. Note that while this will work, it may also send notifications for other events that we might not care about, such as web login failures. Another option is to create a regular expression or regex matching the VPN log details. In this case, we can use ChatGPT to generate a regular expression as shown here. Pause the video if you'd like a longer look at how this was achieved. Then enter the regular expression into the Smart Action profile and select the keyword type to be regex rather than text, and select the required action down the bottom, which in this case is web notification. Now let's look at another example where Smart Action can be used. In this case, we're going to use the schedule feature in Smart Action for the wake on LAN function to wake a PC up at 9 AM on weekdays. The PC is on IP address 192.168.1.100. Note that for this to work, the PC's IP address will need to be bound to its MAC address using the router's bind IP to MAC function. So the first step is to set up the schedule profile under Applications Schedule. We want it to start at 9 AM each weekday with the action force on. Next, go to the Smart Action menu. Select the first available index, enable it and add a comment so we can see at a glance what it's about. Let's call it Wake Up PC. For the event category, select System, and for event type, select Schedule, then select the profile we created earlier. Leave action category as System and action type as Command Line Interface. Then add the CLI command WOL up 192.168.1.100 and click OK to save. Now our workstation will be up and running by the time we sit down at our desk each morning. Okay, let's now look at IP reputation. This will be available in a future firmware version and is part of the Web Content Filter subscription. IP reputation is a security feature in the Vigor3912S router that helps protect against malicious activity. It analyzes the reputation of the IP addresses attempting to connect to the router and blocks any identified as dodgy. This helps prevent attacks from known malicious IP addresses and reduces the risk of security breaches. BrightCloud gives every IP address a score or reputation based on its security risk. So a score of between 1 and 20 is high risk and a score of over 81 is trustworthy. BrightCloud has a lookup service where you can check the reputation of an IP address or URL by entering either into their web page. For www.DrayTek.com, we can see it has a score of 88, making it a trustworthy website. If we look at this site, proftrafficcounter.com, we can see it has a score of 10, making it a high-risk site which is classified as a malware site. Note at the bottom left you can report any false positives or misclassified addresses. Let's now look at how IP reputation works. The Vigor3912 router updates its IP reputation cache from BrightCloud every 5 minutes. The router cache stores high-risk IP addresses with an IP reputation score of between 1 and 20. The size of the cache can be adjusted in the Firewall Defense Setup IP Reputation Defense menu page. An incoming connection is allowed to access a server on the LAN if it has a trustworthy score. In this case, the IP address is not found in the router's IP reputation cache. However, incoming connections from IP addresses with bad reputations are dropped. In this case, the IP address is stored in the router's IP reputation cache. IP reputation is enabled and configured in the Firewall Defense Setup menu. It only applies to inbound traffic, but in future it is expected to also apply to outbound traffic. The status table shows a list of what is in the cache. You might be amazed to see how many people are trying to do nasty things to your router overnight. Here we have the IP reputation syslog. Okay, to finish off, let's look at some security scenarios to show where the Vigor3912S can help. The first example we'll look at is if we're hosting a web server. In this scenario, we need to protect the network and web server from an internet attacker. Using the firewall may not always work since it can only block a specified port, IP address, or even a specified country by using the country object. The problem here is that we don't know the source IP of the attacker, what port they're going to be using, and we don't have a clue what country they might be coming from. The solution here is to use IP reputation. In this next example, we have someone on the LAN side trying to download a file from the internet, and the file turns out to be malicious. So, do we have a way to stop it even though we have IP reputation enabled? Well, the answer is no. The current implementation of IP reputation is for inbound traffic only, so it won't check outgoing requests. However, future updates will allow IP reputation to be used for outgoing requests as well. In this case, where IP reputation doesn't work, we still have Suricata to act as a second layer of protection. It can monitor inbound and outbound traffic on the LAN interface. If a threat is detected, it'll inform the network administrator by the notification method specified by Smart Action. So, to summarise our security scenarios, we were able to stop both examples with 3 security features, that is Smart Action, Suricata, and IP reputation. Okay, we've come to the end of this webinar. Today we started by looking at some highlights of the Vigor3912 series routers. It included a look at the hardware features along with a comparison with the Vigor3910. We also looked at some software features. We then looked at the 3912S Linux applications, which included Suricata, Vigor Connect, Log Collector, and Web Notification History. Finally, we looked at IP reputation, which will be available in a future firmware update. And we also looked at some security scenarios. Okay, that's all for now, but please stay tuned. If you have any questions, we'll be available in the live chat on the right of your screen for the next 5 minutes. For more information about DrayTek products, please check out our website at www.draytek.com.au or send us an email to sales@draytek.com.au or give us a call on 02 9838 8899. Please like and subscribe below, and if you'd like a notification anytime we put up a new video, please select all from the subscribe drop-down menu as well. Thanks and bye for now.